Welcome. My name is Stephen Payne, Director of the Bronx County Historical Society. Today is September 28th, 2023, and I'm delighted to be here with Sonia Goldstein here in the historic Penn South. And Sonia will be talking about that eventually, but there's so much more that Sonia will be sharing even before we get to the Penn South story. The Coops, before that, DC, a whole rich life. And excited to be here with Sonia. So Sonia, why don't you start us off by talking a little bit about your family history and background?
Okay, I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. We lived with my mother's parents. They had a hardware store, and my first language was Yiddish. Everybody spoke Yiddish. And my dad didn't have a job at that time. I was born in 1927. And he got a job when I was 4 years old. And then I had a little brother at that time. So we moved to Washington. And my life in Baltimore, I remember, was idyllic. Uh, the shoemaker was Jewish, and he had a granddaughter. Her name was Rosie. We all spoke Yiddish.
Yeah.
We spoke Yiddish. Now, I'm sure they had businesses. I don't know. I know that my grandmother, I don't know if she knew English at the time. I knew there were Italian carpenters who didn't know English. So she spoke Yiddish, they spoke Italian, they did business together. How, what, where, I can't figure it out. But, maybe that's the immigrant story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So when we moved to Washington, I was the only child in my school that didn't know English.
Oh, wow.
And my mother was different than the other mothers. She dressed differently, she was different. And it was hard.
I bet.
It was hard. I remember being promoted to the first grade on condition. What the condition was, I don't know. But on condition, but the first grade teacher, I knew if you answered something incorrectly, you got rapped on the knuckles with a ruler. So I said nothing. Therefore, I was put back into kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
So I knew I was dumb. Yeah. And that carried me through. that colored my school experience.
I bet.
It was not good. Not good. At any rate, I went to George Washington University the first year, and a friend and I had tickets for a play called Joan of Lorraine with Ingrid Bergman and Sam Wanamaker.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure.
Now, when we got there, now, my parents were communists.
Yeah.
So the theme was in my life, everybody, if you work for a living, you were good. You don't take advantage of anybody. Whatever color you are is okay. In fact, my parents had meetings late at night, like they would start at 10 o'clock. So people of color who came to the meetings, the neighbors wouldn't know, wouldn't see them, and that worked out okay.
Because DC was still segregated at that time.
Oh yeah,
right?
Southern and
Yep.
proud to be that way.
Yep.
Proud. So I went to a summer camp that was a communist camp, and there were people of color there, and children of color. So that was my early life.
Sure.
That if you worked for a living, and it didn't matter, and at the time, also the Spanish Civil War was very, very vivid in my mind. I thought about it later. I'm not sure what that, what the mechanism was, but this is before they had words for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Sure.
But I remember that throughout the country, there were houses when the guys came back. I knew there were women there, but I just knew of the guys that came back from the war who couldn't get it together for one reason or another. They were houses that they could stay at.
Wow.
And ours was one of the houses.
Wow.
So we lived in a 2-story house. We lived downstairs. Another family lived upstairs. We each had our own rooms, our own kitchen, but we shared a bathroom, which was upstairs. So I think I was 11 or 12, that age, and my job was to do the bathroom. I washed the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I remember saying to my mother, "Mom, Stanley pees outside the toilet. I don't want to clean up the floor with him." And she said, "Shop. He's a Spanish vet. Clean it up."
Wow.
So there was this sensibility of understanding. They came back maimed.
Yeah.
And we had to take care of them.
Wow.
So there was this kind of compassion.
Sure.
For humanity.
Sure.
Anyway, to go to Lisner Auditorium to the show. So anyway, my friend and I had tickets. The American Veterans Committee was picketing Lisner Auditorium because they didn't allow blacks in.
Okay,
It was
sure.
white only, but our world was white only.
Yeah, yeah.
And I took a leaflet and I said to the guy who gave me the leaflet, "Oh, I agree with you. I'm with you all the way." And then I went into the theater.
Yeah.
Because I had a ticket. I didn't
sure.
know about boycotting.
Sure.
There was no labor movement as such in New York and in Washington.
Sure.
Because it was government.
Yeah.
You didn't. Anyway, the guy thought to himself, he told me after, what crazy broad is this? At any rate, at some time later, I was in Howard University signing people in for, at that time I was in an organization called American Youth for Democracy.
Oh, sure. I know.
So I was signing people in. The same guy came over to me and he said, "What the hell are you doing here?" Well, this guy was Morty Goldstein.
Oh, I thought it might be.
It's like a movie. And he asked me to go out afterwards for ice cream.
Yeah.
So we shared a banana split.
Oh, wow.
Which I paid for because he had no money. He was a GI. I think he made $65 a month, and a student.
Sure.
And that started we started dating and our life together.
So what year was that when
That
we first
was
met?
1947.
1947.
And we met in, I think, January 47. We got married in December 1947.
I see.
He finished school. He finished his undergraduate work. He wanted to do his graduate work in New York. He did. The only graduate, he was in psychology. The only graduate program was the Catholic University, and it did not have the courses that he wanted to take.
Sure.
He wanted to go into clinical work. So we came to New York, and I thought I died and went to heaven. I came for the weekend to meet his family because we had already decided we were going to get married. And I stayed in the living room on a cot in his parents' home. And I remember it was a Saturday morning, and we were walking down Barker Avenue.
Okay.
And Washington, you would get a ticket if you threw rubbish on the streets, and everything was pristine. It was the
Yeah.
capital of the country. And I remember certainly didn't speak Yiddish on the street. So we're walking down the street, and a window goes up. We were at the Coops, and I hear a woman's voice say, "Abby, you didn't finish your lunch." He said, "Throw it down." I'll never forget that. And a bag comes out. Kid catches the bag, throws it in the street, and munches on a sandwich. I thought I died and went to heaven. I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is, you can be or act however you want.
Uh-huh.
And that was my introduction to this wonderful place.
Wow.
So, in fact, connected to that, after we moved into the Coops, we worked in a summer camp after he graduated undergraduate work, and then we came to the Bronx, and he registered at NYU. We lived in a furnished room where 7 rooms shared 1 bathroom.
Oh, wow.
It was hard.
I
I
bet.
took a bath at his parents' home every night. I went there. Anyway, we finally, my mother-in-law, through the grapevine, heard that this guy, Sam Lipson, who was a writer for the Freiheit,
Mhm.
the communist Jewish newspaper, was going to move in with Annabelle. And she went to him, she said, "Sam, I want your apartment." He says, "You got it,"
Yeah.
So it was a 5th floor walk up in the Coops. And the apartment was a bathroom, a bedroom, and the kitchen, a living room with the kitchen along one wall.
Okay.
But he had all his papers in the bedroom.
Okay, sure.
So we had like a studio because we lived in the living room.
Oh, I see.
And I said to him, "Sam, if I pack up all your papers, could we have the bedroom?"
Yeah.
He said, "Sure, Tatala, do it." So I did that. And he gave me these 3 illustrations done by Gropper,
Wow.
who was an artist for the Freiheit.
Those are amazing.
And they're probably worth a lot of money, but I want, So that's what he gave me too. So I met Gropper at a show many years later when he had a show of his work in Cold Spring Harbor in Long Island. And I said to him, "Mr. Gropper, I have 3 of your illustrations given to me by Sam Lipson." I don't know if you know Yiddish. He said, "He was a ganef then. He was always a ganef, which is a thief.
Uh-huh.
But you could keep him." So,
That's funny.
Anyway.
Wow. What court was it in, the apartment?
it
that
was the
apartment?
second.
The
it was
second
the
court.
floor,
Okay,
yeah.
I see.
It was in Section A in the top floor.
Wow. Wow. And do you remember how much that you paid in rent at that time when you moved in?
I do. The rent, it was $28 and change.
Uh-huh.
Then it went to $31, and I was outraged.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I think forgot how much I made, $60-something a week.
I see.
And Mort was in school, so
Sure.
he made, Oh, it went, because he was married, it went to $105 a month.
Oh,
That he got from the
I
government.
see, I see, I see.
But he worked part-time and did his graduate work. So, meeting the guys you know, more, there were many club rooms. By the way, I don't know, did you get the T-shirts with the commemoration of the Coops? This was the first one, the 50th year.
Oh, in 1977, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. I think I've seen people wearing the shirts in photographs,
Anyway,
but I've
I'm
never
going to
seen.
give you these 2 pillows.
Oh, wow.
Because I think you should have them.
Yeah. Wow.
Now,
those
I
were
made
amazing.
the T-shirts into pillows.
That's amazing.
So this was the 1977 one,
Sure.
and this was the
Oh, I see. Yeah, the slogans
yeah, the
from
slogans.
the time that, yeah.
And this one was the 1990 reunion, 1994.
That's right.
And this was the different club rooms.
Oh, look at that.
So that was.
Oh, wow. I've heard of a lot of them before, but some of them I haven't.
And this was, you know, the streets.
Ah, sure. Which of the clubs was Morty in?
Mort was in Cedar.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see.
And these were young men in their 20s. Mort was like, what, 3 years older than me? So these guys were in their 20s. And they talked about the club room being their paradise, their heaven.
Yeah.
First of all, it was the community of guys together. What I know that Mort's family was on relief, and here they were in their 20s. I don't know how long before that the government had sent in social workers, youth workers, to work with the kids.
Yeah.
And they remembered, I remember his name was Saul, because that's the name they gave me. I don't know his last name, but they remember him fondly, and that he was a lifeline to some of them. He was, you know, they felt that he was for them.
Wow.
He was someone they could go to.
Wow.
And as I said to you before, we could sure use that now for our youth.
Absolutely. And it was the Vanguard Community Center is what it was called, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Who were some of Mort's closest friends that you met at first?
Well, Lambie.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for, you know, I have glitches. It started, my aging process has started.
Oh, sure.
I can see them. All right, it'll come to me.
Oh, sure, that's fine. We can come back to that if it comes to you.
But Mort was not a good student.
Okay.
Because he just wasn't interested in school.
Yeah.
So, but he had a German teacher who felt that he was retarded. So she was very kind.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
He worked always. I mean, he started when he was 8 years old shining shoes.
Yeah.
And he had to give the money to his mother.
Sure.
You know, because they were on relief.
Sure.
So this was their life.
Yeah.
And the dad worked when he could, but there were times when he couldn't.
Yeah.
There were no jobs.
Sure.
So he remembered the German teacher who was so kind to him. And when he came back and told her that he was studying psychology, she said to him very kindly, yeah, I know, dear. You know, I know. Anyway, anyway, he was inducted into the Army at 18. I think, or it was the Second World War. He was going to study. He went to school in the Army. Because he was a bright guy.
Yeah.
And his headquarters was attached to the British Second Army.
Oh, I see.
Which liberated Bergen-Belsen.
Wow.
And that's when his life changed.
I bet. Oh my God.
He said he couldn't. I asked him please to talk to Steven Spielberg's unit to talk about it. He was out of the Army, I think, 2 years when I met him.
Yeah.
And I was the first one that he told that he had part of the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. And he said that the worst thing in his life was holding an older man, feeding him with a bottle. Mm. And that was, he said he broke down.
Yeah.
He broke down. And he, I don't know how long they were in the camp or what the circumstances were, but he was found sometime after, whether it was a week or days after, sitting on a curb in Germany, drunk, because they drank straight alcohol. They didn't have liquor.
Sure.
And there were 3 little kids around him, and they sent him to a hospital to dry out.
Yeah.
And he never talked a lot about it. But it changed his life, and he went to psychology.
Wow.
So
I can't imagine the things that
he
saw and experienced.
I tried to get him to talk to, and here he was, a therapist. He became a psychologist, a clinical psychologist.
Wow.
And he was really a champion for teenage boys, teenage girls, kids who had gotten into trouble with the law, And he was clinically trained, Freudian stuff.
Yeah.
But he was for the Coops.
Yeah, sure.
So he had his own way of working with people. And for some crazy reason, I just remember he got kids, young men, referred to him by the courts who were in trouble with the law. And one of the young guys that he worked, I think he was 17 or 18. I'm sure he was that age. He would rob houses, whatever. Anyway, one of our friends who lived in our town, we lived in Long Island at that time.
Yeah.
Because he got a job with cerebral palsy right after, and that was on Long Island. So we moved out to Long Island just at the time that my first child was born.
Oh, okay.
And so this young man that he had in therapy with him, anyway, a friend of ours, a psychologist who lived in the same town we did, said to Mort, I have like a 200 bottle of wine, and some crazy kid, they stole it. They broke into my house, they stole it, and I burned. So Mort, when he next saw this young man, he said, look, if you're going to work in my town, you got to steal from me too, because I'm going to be suspect. So I want to let you, because he could talk their language.
Yeah, sure.
So the police told us, he said, I don't understand. We don't have any calls from Plainview. We never have a call for your town.
That's funny.
The kid must have said, hands off in this town, because I'll get into trouble. Anyway, so he was, followed his own drummer. He, you know, his own tune, and he was only a guy from the Coops. For instance, a mom called him and said her son had thrown over the refrigerator. He was really, and he was a kid that Mort was seeing, a young man.
Yeah.
I think he was 17. And she said that the court referred him to the hospital, and they were going to do
electroshock or something.
electric shock. Yeah, thank you, electric shock.
Yeah.
And so he was outraged.
Yeah.
Went to the because it was a local hospital. He knew the psychiatrist. He went up there. He canceled his hours. He went right up there. He grabbed the guy by the throat in the hospital and said, "If you touch one of my kids, I'll kill you, and you know I will." They canceled the program.
Wow. Wow.
These are the guys from the Coops.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are the guys from the Coops. They were, I think they never felt alone.
Yeah.
That's what I loved. You know, they were so together and for each other.
Yeah.
That's what they learned.
Yeah.
That's what they learned. It was truly a cooperative.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, another example, you know, in our later life is Mort was a psychologist for a program with United Cerebral Palsy.
Mhm.
And he was a psychologist for a program that worked with preschoolers who had cerebral palsy, birth to 5, you know,
Sure.
before school. And John Del Maestro in Suffolk County, who was head of the mafia, got on the board of the program so that he could meet with town leaders, you know, openly, da-da. And Mort, being wise, having grown up as he did, there was they set up a retirement program for staff that he felt he wanted to protect so that it couldn't be broken into. So he did it under federal government, blah, blah, blah. And I remember being at one of the dinners and someone coming up to Mort and said, "Hey, Goldstein, I sure want to get my hands on that fund you got." So Mort said, "You never will." Anyway, they maligned him, and he lost his job, and they fired the principals, and in fact, you can look it up at Newsday. I think it was 1977, I think, but it was John Del Maestro. He was head of the his business was the fencing company, and there was Newsday carried many articles on that. So they had to find another site for the school.
Yeah.
The parents took their kids out, marched with the teachers on strike.
Wow.
So they, you know, and one of the parents had ran a summer camp. So for the winter and spring, the school was there, and then they needed a site. But Del Maestro told everybody, because he was head of the building trade, and And all the sites were, they were afraid to go against Del Maestro. And I remember Lambie, Leon Lambert,
Sure.
who was he worked in construction. Anyway, he said to one of the guys, he said, look, my guys in the Bronx will back you.
Yeah.
Give them a place to rent.
Yeah.
So they did. So they're in Yaphank, and it's now called the New Interdisciplinary School in Yaphank.
Wow.
And that's still in existence,
Wow.
has a fine reputation. But this is the roots for the Coops.
Yeah. The fighting.
And the standing up for each other.
Yeah.
And like my image is they stand with arms locked, and you're not going to get past us because we're defending our right.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, around what year was it when you all moved to Long Island?
1953.
1953.
Exactly.
So that's when your son was born.
That was my son was born.
I see. So were there other Coopniks who lived close to you in Long Island by the time you moved out there? No. Just you.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Would you all go back to the Bronx on a fairly regular basis?
No, but we saw each other.
Sure.
We made, we got together.
Yeah.
We got together. Like two guys who worked with the Furriers Union
Okay, sure.
once came to our house on Lillian Lane in Plainview to let us know that our neighbor 3 doors away, who was a furrier, had been taking work home, and that was against the union. So they came to our house to let us know that, because they knew that we were friends with this guy, that they were going to raid his house, and that to let us know that this was going to be happening.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what about the kids and the wife? He says, you can't say anything, just support them. So it was so much a part of our lives.
Yeah.
Because this is who we were.
Yeah.
I say we because I'm part of the Coops. I mean, I'm
Absolutely.
proudly so.
Absolutely. I want to ask you more about the early years in Long Island in a second, but before I do so, why don't you talk some more about the years you were in the Coops, as far as the social life you had, what jobs you might have had while he was in school, then after he was in school, if you continue to work, that period of your life.
Well, I was a clerk typist. I knew shorthand and typing.
Okay, sure.
And that was my passport to jobs.
Absolutely.
So I remember Sky Jack. I don't remember his last name. Anyway, he was part of District 65.
Okay.
So he was able to help me get a job in one of the offices. So I worked there part-time until I got a full-time job. And then I worked for the American Friends of the Hebrew University.
Okay. Sure.
And I worked for one of the guys there. He was a fundraiser, and I was his secretary. And I remember this woman, Bobby. I don't remember her last name. But we worked with the youth, mostly guys. What's interesting? Well, it's clearly, I thought about it after, but they had workers with the boys, not with the young girls. They didn't have clubs, the girls.
Yeah.
And I thought about that. Yes, they didn't get into trouble the way the boys did, and maybe that's why
Sure.
the focus was on the boys, because they would have they were together, but not the same way the boys were
Yeah, yeah,
in the clubs.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
I don't
I
remember
thought about
everyone.
that.
I don't remember anyone really making that explicit before. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I've never heard of any
No,
clubs for
no,
the girls.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Huh.
And but they were the loyalty to each other and the love for each other. And what I loved about these guys is they weren't embarrassed to show their feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the way sometimes guys, you gotta be
Sure.
there, you're a teacher. Not them.
Yeah.
Not them. They were, this is after they were adults. I remember them visiting this woman, Laura. She had an appendectomy, and they made all kinds of toys and games for her. They went up to her hospital room, and they were, making her laugh, and she was hurting. They were, in fact, after Mort died, the reaching out to me from the guys was so touching to me.
Mm.
And I knew that if I needed any one of them, I could call them.
Wow.
That was okay. That was pretty devastating.
Wow. What year was that?
2000.
2000.
2000.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
He died of melanoma. He had
Oh
cancer.
my God.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Mm. Wow. So a lot of his friends were still alive at that point, then, right?
Most were.
Yeah.
A couple of guys had died. Greenie had died, and one other had died. Cancer.
Wow.
One of the guys, Nat, had been so traumatized by the Army, and I think it may have been his early life too, that he never really got it together.
Yeah.
I don't think he could work. It was, which, now they know post-traumatic stress, whatever.
That's
that
right.
is, depending on the experience.
That's right.
in the
Wow.
Army.
Wow.
But this was the group, the age group, his age group, was these guys. I think they all were in the Army.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
all,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think their life in the Coops helped them in terms of gave them a base. I remember, the booklet the first booklet, the commemorative booklet, was of the guys that had died.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And there were a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So would you and Mort, would you go to some of his friends or your friends' apartments in the Coops and
Oh yeah.
play cards, that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
we played cards, we got together, we hung out.
Yeah.
There was a whole group of like four couples, I think. No, 3 couples, there were 6 of us. One of our friends, this was before Eric was born, so say it was 1952, 52, something like that. With 3 couples, went up to New England. And our friend Ramey had a 36 Cadillac. And it was a Cadillac. But it was a 36, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we had to put gas in, we had to put oil in. It was, we lasted the week. And I remember that week vividly. There were times we slept in the car.
Yeah.
We had no vineyard. And we drove, all these cars there, we drove onto the ferry.
Yeah.
And one of the women went to get tickets.
Yeah.
And she said, get off, because it took all our money. So we just drove around Martha's Vineyard and left at the next ferry because we had no money for food. But it was all okay.
Sure.
We managed.
Absolutely.
And one night, I remember, we slept in a half-finished motel.
Yeah.
The doors were open. There were beds. Why there were beds there? I don't know. So we slept there. Didn't have to pay anybody anything.
Wow.
It was. The feeling was, we can do it.
Yeah.
We'll be okay. Because we have each other.
Yeah.
It was after Mort died. I don't remember what year it was. But there was a show at the Museum of the City of New York on
Sure.
Coops.
Sure.
And my friend Yak, who was in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Well, you know Yak, right?
Yeah.
Called me and said, Sonia, I'll pick you up. So I said, you don't have to pick me up. You're coming from Teaneck. I'll meet you. I'll take a train and I'll meet you.
Yeah.
At the museum. He said, no. I'll pick you up. I said, okay. So he picked me up because when we walked in, there was a big picture of Mort and Greenie and another one as you walked in, and I started crying. I mean, but Yak knew that. So he picked me up.
Wow.
So, the humanity is really what I was surrounded with in the Coops. That's what it was.
Absolutely. Now, did the McCarthy era, did that have an effect on you and Mort and Mort's friends? Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
We were harassed and hounded in Washington and here. I think I told you this, that in Washington, just at the time we were getting married, just before we got married, there was a big push for integration in Washington.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were involved in that. And the thing was that if the real estate guys, whatever, tried to get a black person to buy a house in a white neighborhood,
yeah,
in a white block,
yeah,
and that would be inexpensive,
yeah,
but then people would run.
Yep.
They would buy up the houses and then make a lot of money selling them to black families who had money, because there were black families that did have money who were living in the ghetto and couldn't get out. Okay, that's the background. So I don't remember the name of the church, but I remember it was Reverend Robinson. It was a black church.
Sure.
Bought a small apartment house, 54 Randolph Place, Northeast.
Okay.
Right off North Capitol Street.
Wow.
It was 4 floors, 2 apartments on a floor.
Yeah.
And it was a small one on a white block.
Yeah.
But he didn't want it to be all black. He wanted it to be integrated.
Sure.
And Mort was asked, would he take an apartment? and we were getting married, and we thought, great, that's great, we'll have an apartment, and we were very happy to have it. So as soon as the first black family moved in, people left the apartment, but the top floor there was one gay couple.
Yeah.
And us, we were the only white families.
I see.
In this apartment house. And we lived there until we went to New York.
Okay, sure.
Which was a year later. And that was, we were the newly married couple.
Yeah.
And they were, each one, so careful. Taught me how to cook.
Yeah.
And really just welcomed me and took care of me.
Wow.
So Mort was in school. I went to work. I remember he learned to play tank. It was a card game because he loved card games. He loved to gamble. Card games every Saturday night. And I think about that place.
Huh.
Because it was home, and I was welcome. I've been lucky.
Yeah, you've lived in some really amazing places.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting.
So we were, we did our thing. We worked for integration. We were on every list that there could be.
Uh-huh.
And Mort was so happy, and he thought, he married into a family with money, because he had a house, and so he invited the guys. They came and visited many weekends, and two guys, Mike and Nat, moved in with us.
Okay, yeah.
So we had a 1-bedroom apartment. We had, at that time, the 5 and 10 sold paper drapes. And we had paper drapes.
Okay.
We had no money. It didn't matter. And finally, Mike, we said to Mike, you got to find a place. It's not working. Nat went back home because he couldn't manage on his own. And they had a housewarming party at their new apartment. It was Mike and 2 other guys.
Yeah.
And we had an integrated life.
Sure.
We met after dark, all that stuff. So we got to the housewarming apartment, and there was a bang on the door after a while, and they came in. It was the riot squad.
Mm.
They said somebody heard a gunshot, which scared the hell out of us.
Yeah.
This was in 1949.
1949, okay.
So they took us down. They separated the men and the women, the girls and the guys, really.
Uh-huh.
2 black Mariahs, took us down to the station. And before we got there, the word had gotten, because they were always news people who stand around waiting for, that they had busted up a prostitute ring.
Okay.
So that's how they greeted us. Anyway, separated men and women, and we were in a room, and I remember one of my friends looking through her wallet and her pocketbook to see if there's anything incriminating.
Yeah.
And she found a ticket from the UJA.
Okay. Wow.
So our feelings of anti-Semitic,
Uh-huh.
followed all the other things.
Absolutely.
So we were interrogated. We were there all night, and then they released us and let us go home. It was never in the papers, never anywhere. And it was before the Miranda Act, so we had no recourse.
Of course.
But I was worried. My mother had been very ill when I was 10. She had a breakdown. And I was worried that because I didn't know it wouldn't be in the newspapers,
Sure.
that if she saw that, she would get upset. So I said, we got to go see her.
Yeah.
I have to tell her that we were arrested.
Yeah.
So the next day was Sunday. This was a Saturday night. And so we went to the house. And I said, Mom, I have to tell you something. I want you to sit down. And I said, I was arrested last night. I don't know what the repercussions are going to be. I have no idea. So she says, you think that was the first time you were arrested? I said, yeah. She says, no. First time you were arrested, you were in my stomach. We were marching around the White House for jobs.
Wow.
So I said, that's a nice heritage. I like that.
Wow.
So all of that tells me where I come from and what I believe in.
Absolutely.
And what and the fact that I landed, besides Mort,
Yeah.
the guy that I was glad I married, it's where he came.
That's right.
And, I wasn't born there. I didn't grow up there.
Yeah.
But my feelings about all the people that I knew and were with there are my family.
Yeah.
It was yes, we all believed in the same things. That's true. But it's also who they were.
Yeah.
They wanted, it's like the movie said, they wanted a better life for everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody. And that's what they worked for.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they undid themselves.
Yeah.
This place, it was a lady garment workers union, built this place.
Mm-hmm.
But they know they live in a capitalist society.
Yeah.
So we have 24th to 28th Street, our apartments.
Yeah.
And our senior center and the mothers group and whatever. But between 23rd and 24th, 8th and 9th Avenue, we own that home. And we get income from that.
I see.
So that our rents are going up, but not where for this apartment, 1 bedroom with a balcony.
Yeah.
And really good services. We really, in a day or two, if you call for anything,
yeah,
you get service on it.
Wow.
I pay under $1,000 a month.
Wow.
That's gas, electric, rent.
Incredible.
Whatever.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow.
And $5 a month to the senior center.
Wow. 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 So yeah, that's it. Penn South has really stayed afloat. Yeah. Yeah.
And we have, public housing, NYCHA, here between 9th and 10th Avenue.
Yeah.
And they're going to tear them down. Where are these people going to go? You know that they're not going to build.
I know. That's right.
And what are they going to do? I mean, more people on the street?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So what are we doing? What
know.
are we doing?
I know. As an aside, I overheard at an event a couple weeks ago some Um, you know, owners of a large real estate company bragged that they had 40,000 vacant apartments, uh, and that they could easily host, you know, 40,000 of the migrants that have come here, but that they wouldn't get enough money, so they refuse to do it. Yep. But that's one company alone. I mean,
Right.
between all of the larger companies in New York, how many vacant apartments are there, you know?
Hudson Yards. You know,
Mhm.
I boycott Hudson. I've never been there.
Yep.
I don't want to go there. I will not go there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a crime, really. Um, wow. So, how long did you and Mort live on Long Island?
40 years.
40 years.
Over
Wow.
40 years. Yeah.
Okay, I see. And when you moved, did you move here from Long Island? Is that?
No, because
Oh.
Mort made too much money. He
Oh,
was a psychologist.
I see.
He was
I see. Yeah.
big shot.
Sure.
So we were in the 80s, in the 1980s. A cousin of Mort said, "Hey, Mort, I heard there's a place in Manhattan that's like the Coops, or kind of like the Coops.
Yeah.
Why don't we sign up?"
Yeah.
I said, "Good, I'll sign up." So we did.
Yeah.
We put our $50 down, and you can get it back if you
Yeah.
take your name off the list. So I don't know. In the 80s, we did that. So I had it with living on Long Island. My kids had gone off to school.
Yeah.
And the area had changed. You know, because we had a wonderful group of people because we built better schools. It was two communities. It was Plainview, Obeth Page.
Okay.
And Obeth Page had a one-room schoolhouse.
Wow.
And we had 1,800 homes in Plainview. So we worked for better schools. I mean,
Sure.
this is what we did with our lives.
Yeah.
We made our lives richer.
Yeah.
Actually,
Sure.
you know. So he had the private practice in the home, in our house, and I had to get out.
Yeah.
I had discovered art. I was, I needed to. I felt stifled.
Yeah. Sure.
So we negotiated, and I got him an office in someone's home. He said he didn't want to be in a building, and he would travel from there. So we moved to Lincoln Towers.
Oh. Okay. I see.
We had rented we looked at the papers, and there was a rental for a short, couple of months, and then we bought a place in Lincoln Towers.
Yeah.
And we lived there until Mort died.
I see.
And after he died, I was eligible, so I could live here.
Sure.
Cool. In a couple of months, it was in 2003, so it was not the long waiting list that there is now.
I see. Wow.
So I lucked out.
Yeah.
I lucked out because now there's a senior center, and with social workers, nurses, classes, exercise, all kinds of support and enhanced things going on.
That's great.
I'm on the board.
Oh, that's good.
I'm
Wow.
on the board.
And I know it's especially important as people age to have regular community. Otherwise,
Exactly.
yeah. So
Exactly.
that's wonderful. It's important for everyone to have regular community, but
Yeah. In fact, there are 5 of us women who meet every week on Wednesday mornings for coffee. And one of our group died suddenly just about a month ago, or 6 weeks ago. And I just felt that we needed to acknowledge her. It's at Sullivan Coffee House. And I asked if we could commemorate her. I wanted to do Peggy's Corner. And just yesterday they said, yeah, we could.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to do something with her daughter, who's an artist, and we'll do something. So we're part of the community. This is where I want to be at this time of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know what else to tell you about the Coops.
Oh, sure. I'll ask you a few more questions about the Coops, and then there's plenty of other things we can get to as well. So in the Coops, were you and Mort some of the people? I know I've heard various people talk about parties at Angie Dickerson's place. Would you all ever go to those get-togethers?
I was at Angie Dickerson's house a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I hung out there. I don't know if we went to the parties there, but I hung out there a lot. In fact, her husband taught me to drive.
Oh, because he was a driver, right?
Yeah. So someone at the when I was at the that Sunday of the show, when with the opening, I mentioned that, but he was my driving teacher, and I don't know the name of the woman. She said that you were a good driver. I said I sure was. I was a good driver. I was. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess since they had an apartment right there in the first court in the bigger apartment on the first floor.
And the door was always open.
Yeah.
The door was always open.
Yeah.
And there's always people there.
Yeah. I know that family, and I've heard it from multiple other families, have a story about, seems like almost every family from the Coops that was political has a story about, a confrontation with an FBI officer or multiple during that period. Did they harass y'all when you lived in the Coops too?
Yeah, they would knock on your door, and I would get very frightened.
Yeah, for sure, that's a frightening thing.
But Mort wasn't. But when they came one time, and it was election day.
Yeah.
He was amazing. He really was amazing. He said, "You're coming. This is the United States of America." He said, "You're coming to harass me on election day? Shame on you! Shame on you!" They left.
Wow. Were you all very active or involved with the American Labor Party at that point? Yeah, because they had their
the headquarters
meeting room right around the corner, right? Yeah.
I remember, at that time, they were talking about a woman who was very nervous or whatever. They said, "Give her more leaflets to give out. She'll get over, more action." Crazy. That's going to be the answer to get more involved. And don't look at yourself.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Oh boy. Wow.
Yeah.
So you already mentioned when you moved out to Long Island, struggles for better education that you all were involved in. Were there other things that you all found yourselves involved in Long Island?
The women, it was mostly where I lived, the development that I lived in. Many of the guys were teachers.
Yeah.
And the women had been teachers, but at that time you stayed home with your babies, with your kids.
Sure.
And we wanted a nursery school.
Sure.
So we built the co-op nursery. We didn't build it. We bought a house and we made the co-op nursery. And one of our group, her name was Florence, was a CPA.
Okay.
And she wrote up a whole proposal. Well, we went to this was a little country bank, in Plainview, Long Island, and the manager there was so impressed with us women, and the fact that we had this wonderful, that they gave us whatever we asked, the money. Anyway, that nursery is still in existence as a co-op,
Wow.
and we wrote in it that when the community no longer needs a co-op, a nursery, for it to be a teenage center.
Oh,
But
I see.
it's still a nursery.
Still a
It's still
nursery.
running as a co-op. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a not-for-profit co-op.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Still there.
Wow. That's great.
So, well, it's like, as you well know, it's what you learn in your life that you take with you.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, or however old you are.
Yeah.
It's your belief system.
Sure.
It's your belief system.
Sure.
And I grew up with that belief system, but I felt so many times in Washington isolated, alone, because I was. But once I got to the Coops, even though we lived on Long Island, we moved there, I had a baby there. That Coops feeling of we was so strong. It lasted my whole life.
Wow. Wow. So what was it like in 1977 with the first, I guess that was probably the first big reunion of Coops Two. What was that experience like?
It was interesting that we were involved in that, and Mort's brother was also involved. By the way, his brother married a Sonia also, which is crazy.
What was his brother's name?
Irv.
Okay.
Tootie.
Oh, okay. Tootie.
Yeah. And a whole plane load of people came from California for that reunion.
That's right.
And I don't know this man's name, but I was there signing people in. And he said to me, "What you children did today, then I know we were right."
Wow.
And I when I say it, I get chills.
Yeah. Wow. And at that point, there were still at least a good number of first generation Coopniks that were still there, right?
Right.
Or at least at Co-op City if they'd moved or nearby.
Like my mother-in-law, she lived on the 4th floor. When she got older, she had to move to the 1st floor.
Yeah, definitely.
Here we used to have elevators that stopped on every other floor.
Oh.
Here in Penn South.
Okay.
Now we have them on every floor. We now.
That's good. Wow.
Because people get older.
That's right.
And still are here.
Yeah.
In fact, this year, we now have a film that we just put out called The Originals. They're now interviewing people who've been. And I don't know why we waited so long to do that.
Sure.
Because most of the people are gone. That's
right. Wow. Yeah. Remind me, when was Penn South started?
1963. When was Kennedy assassinated?
Yeah, 63.
63.
Yeah.
It's spring 63 because he was there. Eleanor Roosevelt was there.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And then in November he was assassinated.
Wow. Yeah, but between Penn South, Amalgamated, Co-op City, I mean, there's so many successful non-market housing setups here in New York, and the history is mostly unknown other than if you live in the buildings,
But no place has what we have.
Yeah, this sounds like, an incredible.
I think it's, from what I understand, our senior center is a model for the country.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And it's interesting to think you mentioned the Vanguard Community Center. that was on a very small scale and for youth. But this, I mean, you have a similar thing on a much larger scale for seniors. Is there a youth center here?
Our youth center, we have a black top for kids and so forth.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But there isn't the focus that was in
Yeah.
the Coops.
Yeah.
But I think it's starting now because of our what they call the originals. So the teenagers are now getting involved in this.
Oh.
Kids that grew up here.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's energizing that whole.
Wow.
Yeah.
And are there different kinds of clubs and all here at Penn South?
Well, there's a music club. There's
Okay.
oh, sorry. There's ceramics.
Oh, okay.
There's woodworking.
Yeah.
Those are the two that I know of.
Yeah. And does Penn South have an auditorium or a
We have a
meeting
lot
room?
of community rooms.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Unfortunately, the one at the Coops has been closed off now for decades.
17 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And one of I don't think she's president of the Tenants Council anymore, but she was for multiple decades, Janice Walcott.
I remember because I met Janice. Yeah.
And she was telling me how she would always have to walk by and try and peek in to see if they were trying to build something in those spaces. Because now that it's landmarked, they're not supposed to, but of course, if they can get away with it.
I didn't know it was landmarked.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Since the late 80s, I forget what year it was, but, you know.
Yeah, she worked at, if you get to see her, tell her that, you know, I don't know if she remembers my name, but Boris, she worked a lot with Boris.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know I've seen pictures of Boris, I guess back in the 70s, cleaning out the library, because that was another thing. And I'm glad he was able to save a lot of books.
I know.
And I'm glad he was able to do that.
Yeah, I think if you know, Boris started carving, doing art,
Yeah.
you know, carving stone, and I had an extra hammer, so I gave him some of my tools. And you know what? It was family.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Family.
A large family.
Right.
And I know you mentioned you started getting into art. Do you have any of your pieces on display here?
Yeah.
A lot of these pieces, I thought they might be. Do you want to talk about that period of your life some? I'd love to hear about it. I'm just gonna
Well,
show a few.
I was a caretaker for my mother.
Yeah.
And I knew how to do that. And like if you ask a kid, it's my personal story, what do you want to be when you grow up? So my dad was a Russian intellectual, so I knew about art and music. He could sing any opera.
Wow.
He'd wake up in the morning singing opera. So my dream at that time was to be a muse to a great man like Toscanini's daughter was to Horowitz, who was a nut pianist, and she would get him a. How the hell did I know that? I do not know. I don't know how old I was when I knew that. So that's what, you know. So I kind of, that's how I saw myself as a helpmate to great men. Married a great man. So, had a lot of therapy. because I needed it.
Sure.
I knew that, and it was not scary to me because it's home base, And a friend of ours, they were two of them were psychologists, the husband and wife. And they approached us and said, we want to start a leaderless couples group, just a therapist, or at least one member of the couple being a therapist. Would you want to join us? So that we were 3 couples.
Yeah.
And in that process, I discovered what my passion was.
Okay.
My passion, not, didn't know I had one, And what the process of that group was, people don't understand, but anyway, in the work that we did, it allowed me to go step outside and see what the world was there and support him in letting me go, trusting I'd come back.
Yeah.
That I was not going to find my passion and leave.
Sure.
Well, in all of this, so I went to different workshops. I went to a stone carving workshop and fell in love. Fell in love. I remember I thought, oh my God, I had not experienced that kind of feeling in my life before. So I discovered stone carving.
And yeah, your pieces are really incredible.
Thank you.
All throughout. Have you exhibited them anywhere before?
Yeah, just within our group,
Yeah,
in
sure.
our class and stuff.
Sure.
I had studied with 3 different teachers. I did clay, and then when I discovered sewing,
That was it, huh?
that was it.
Wow.
And then I did stone carving workshops for people to discover themselves. And in my 50s, I went to school and got my degree, my undergraduate degree.
Oh.
And that was great.
Was that in
Empire State College.
Oh, okay. And was that in sculpture or something along
It was art and psych.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And then I became a preschool special ed teacher.
Okay, sure.
It was like the family business.
That's right. That's right. And so all of this was while you were still in Long Island,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Wow.
Right.
So I imagine all of that discovery, that's probably what led to you feeling a little restless on Long Island eventually, right?
Yeah. Once I discovered art and, I had a gallery for a short time in my house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Long Island.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
I bet.
That was fun.
I bet.
And then I realized I really wanted to, that was a little distraction. I needed to do my own work.
Yeah.
And that was really sad for me when I could no longer, I got older and could not carry 100 pounds of stone anymore. And couldn't get,
Yeah.
So that was sad.
Mm. Do you still kind of do similar work on a smaller scale with stones at all, or
I can't.
anymore?
My
Yeah.
hands are not
Yeah.
working. I have
Yeah,
trouble
yeah.
with a knife; it slips out of my hands.
I see.
The aging process not kind. That's all I can say.
That's right. I know.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that's very hard for you not being able to work with stone.
Well, it's been a while now, so
Yeah.
I've accepted that. But I get excited, with some of the art stuff I see. And I have grandchildren, and one of my granddaughters was into art. She's now, surprise, surprise, a family therapist. She lives in Colorado, and we do have a house on Fire Island. Have you ever been to Fire Island?
I haven't. No, no.
You haven't opened it, but I'll get in touch with you somehow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's my paradise.
Wow.
It's a pretty special place.
Wow.
So I said to her, we get together Thanksgiving, as I said to you before. And I said, this Thanksgiving, I'm ready to part with some of my art books. Oh, Grandma! So she'll come and she'll pick up.
Oh, wow.
Books.
Do you have particular pieces in here that you connect with the most as far as pieces that you created
No,
over the years?
it's just each piece I know where I was in my head at the time,
I
which
see.
one is when,
Sure. Sure.
And my older daughter, the one in Chicago, was a potter.
Okay.
And she, in her, what year? I don't know, junior year, whatever, went to England. And she, in school, as part of her, she did a semester in England. And she met an artist there, an English artist, a sculptor. She worked in clay there. And her name was Joan. I can't remember the last name. But anyway, she came to this country and had no money.
Yeah.
So she stayed with us, and she did a portrait of my husband.
Oh.
So she said to me, she said, do you think Mort would sit for a portrait for me if I played Mahler for him? They loved Mahler. I said, absolutely. So she did.
I was actually going to ask you what Mort's relationship to the arts was.
He was very jealous of it. He said, why don't you talk to me about it? I said, no, my thing.
Did he engage in any artistic practice?
He sketched sometimes.
He sketched sometimes. Yeah. And what other kinds of music did he and you
jazz.
listen to?
Jazz.
Okay. Jazz.
His funeral played jazz. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
You think of those guys, they knew jazz. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Pete has talked about that.
Right.
Said they used to go down to Harlem,
Uh-huh.
And check out all the clubs.
Right.
They couldn't have been.
Right.
I think he said even, maybe 15 or 16 at the time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, really incredibly rich life that you've led. Just for the sake of the record, one thing that I realize I haven't asked you yet.
Yeah.
The names of your parents.
Oh, my dad's name was Meyer.
Okay.
My mom's name was Molly.
I see.
But her Russian name really was Manya.
I see.
She anglicized it, or the guy when she came into this country called her Molly. Yeah.
And were they both from the former Russian Empire?
Mm-hmm.
Did they come to the U.S. when the Russian Empire was still around, or after the?
During the Revolution. They both came unwillingly.
I see.
My mother had been. Her story is interesting. Had been revolutionary.
Yeah, sure.
She very much was part of the revolution, and she was born in 1904. And she was young.
Yeah.
In the revolution, and her thing was, she said to me, "Oh, I don't even know how old I was," but she said, "Sonia, when you walk in the park with a book under your arm, everybody knows you can read." And that was what you. There were no schools.
Uh-huh.
Everybody was dirt poor.
Uh-huh.
And how you learned to read was if you fed a teacher a meal, then during that time she would teach the children sitting around the table whenever they got to read.
Yeah.
So she said she used to get old papers, newspapers,
Yeah.
wherever they went, and paste them right side up on the wall to practice reading. So she was sent away because she was who she was.
Yeah.
She gave out grain in her town or whatever, and in the revolution she was sent off to school, another town, sent off to school. And that's what she did. Her father was in this country working to earn money to bring the children over. There were, four of them, 4 girls and her mom.
Yeah.
In her town. And she went to another town, I don't know the name of that town. Anyway, when her mom got the tickets from the dad, she went to the town where my mother was and said, "Come, we're ready to go to America."
Yeah.
She said, "I don't want to go." And my mother, her mother said, "If you don't go, none of us will go. I will not lose a child."
Sure.
And my mother's words were, I have it on tape. So I gave up my life and I went.
Wow.
So she came to this country. Her 3 sisters who were younger went to school, and she went to work in the garment industry in Baltimore. They came to Baltimore.
Sure.
So that was her story.
Wow.
And she met my father in a class where immigrants learn English.
Okay, I see.
They met.
I see. And what's his story? How did
his story was his dad was a cantor and a rabbi.
Okay.
And a mohel.
Okay, sure.
In the revolution, grandmother came to him and said, "Reb Freistadt, my daughter gave birth to a son. I want to have a bris."
Yeah.
He said, "It's not allowed because it's a religious." She said, "But how could it be?"
Yeah.
I must. So in the middle of the night, he performed a bris, which was stupid because the father was a functionary, was away on a meeting. He would come home, he wouldn't know his kid was serving, and who else was there in town, right?
Yeah.
So my father is one of 8 children. The oldest one, who was part of the revolution, got to her father in the middle of the night at some point and said, "Papa, they're coming for you. You have to leave.
Yeah.
I have a ticket for you. You have to get out."
Yeah, sure.
So we took the youngest child, a boy, and came to this country.
I see.
My grandmother came with the 3 other younger ones came, and the 4 older ones chose not to come.
I see. Wow.
So in 1939, my grandmother was always oh, by the way, at the end of the war, you could talk to your family without, you didn't have to pay any money.
Yeah.
The United States let you talk to family in Europe, in Russia, I know.
Wow.
So my father called his favorite sibling, Sarah, and they introduced their families to each other on the phone.
Wow.
So I got to talk to, and he kept crying and saying her name, crying and saying her name. So anyway, in 1939, the family decided, okay, enough complaining, Mom. And I was the oldest grandchild,
Yeah.
and I was going to go with her on a boat to Russia.
Yeah, sure.
Hitler marched into, Poland, 1939. That was it.
That was it.
So she never got to see those children.
Oh, that's too bad.
But we have met 3 of the cousins.
Wow.
They came after Perestroika.
Yeah.
They came.
Wow.
All of us here, the 9 cousins here, chipped in and sent them money to come
Wow.
visit us.
Wow.
And I'm astounded at how alike we are. One of them knows every opera. She walks down the street singing it. That's my dad. And the other one plays solitaire all the time. I said, do you play? She says, of course. And my dad always plays solitaire.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I think it's always so interesting to hear about families with a background like your own, because the outlook really was, world culture, just everything was a part of the experience, from the, highest of the high, whatever you consider that, down to the very, working class proletarian kind of culture. And it's very rare that people have that exposure to really any of that at all. But
in fact, one of my cousins in St. Petersburg, her name is Ina, takes a photograph in the morning of, St. Petersburg is beautiful.
Yeah.
Of the bridges and the buildings, and she just says, she sends a picture on Facebook and says, good morning, in Russian, and then you hit the translation and says, good morning.
Wow. Wow. So when it comes to your father and mother's family that did come over, when they came over, before they came over, did most of them stay in the Baltimore, D.C. area? Yeah. I see. And which?
In fact, one of my cousins, I'll tell you this, his name is Murray Sidlin.
Okay.
Did a film on the called Verdi's Requiem.
Mm.
And he did, it's worth watching. It's called name is Murry Sidlin, Sidlin.
Okay.
And it's called Verdi's Requiem.
I'll look him up.
And it has to do with one of the concentration camps.
Oh, wow.
And Verdi's Requiem.
Wow.
So I said to him, because he's much younger, I said to him, Murray, how did you get into this? He studied at Peabody, and he's been around the world conducting. And he said, Sonia, do you remember during the war, your father was always banging the table with his friends, discussing where they should have the second front, where they should open the second front, and we were sitting under the table playing cards. I said, yeah, I remember that. She said, I never forgot it. He said, your dad told me all about the war,
Wow.
So it was interesting.
That is interesting, yeah.
You don't know,
I know, wow.
You can look him up, you can Google him.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. And what about, again, just for the sake of the record, the names of your children and grandchildren, if you want to share that. Some people.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
My son's name is Eric.
Okay.
The next one is Carla.
Uh-huh.
And the little one is Tina.
I see.
Tina McCourt. Eric and Carla, his last name is Goldstein. And I got to tell you, I'm proud of my son. He's got the dream job of his life. He's the sports psychologist for Miami University.
Wow.
He is so thrilled. He was a soccer player. He's a job.
Yeah. But again, keeping a family business. That's funny. And how many grandchildren do you have?
Um, I guess with the marriage, it was 10.
Okay,
So
I see.
actually 7, and 3 are married.
I see, I see.
Connected to another.
And any great grandchildren yet?
Nope.
Okay,
No.
I see.
I don't see that happening soon.
I see.
They're all busy with their lives.
Sure, sure.
And Tina, my youngest, her older daughter graduated from William and Mary in photojournalism. And since she's, I think, 9 years old, she was fascinated with England and the kings and queens and all of that. So she did her graduate work at the University of Art in London.
Yeah.
And decided to live in London.
Wow.
And that's where she is.
Wow. So a couple more questions, at least that I have, and then I'll see if there's further things that you'd like to share also. But the first question, you've more or less said this in multiple ways already, but what does the Coops represent to you?
A haven.
Yeah.
Home. I don't think I said this, mentioned this to you. One time I came home from work, a woman that I did not know came up to, I'm walking up Barker Avenue, and she pointed to me, she poked me, with her finger and said, "You belong to Morty?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Good." I never knew anything. She walked on. So it was home, acceptance. I could be who I was. I didn't have to walk a tightrope.
Yeah.
Who I was okay.
Yeah.
Don't get many places like that.
That's right. And coming from DC, it's like Leadbelly saying it's a bourgeois town.
And I felt, I know I was born in this country, but I don't feel like I was born in this country.
Yeah.
I feel like an immigrant.
Yeah.
And I know, I've lived a long time and I've done lots of other, but the feeling.
That's right. Absolutely.
And I was accepted in Washington. I felt like I had to walk a tightrope.
Yeah.
Be careful. Watch it.
That's right.
We demonstrated. There was an area in Northeast Washington where a neighborhood was changing from white into black. So the playground, black kids were allowed in the playground, but they weren't allowed in the pool.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So what's new, right?
Yep.
So we demonstrated, and we came upon a burning cross. That was scary.
I bet.
That was scary.
I bet. Wow. Oh, that reminds me, one thing worth asking you at this point before I get to another larger question. Were you and Mort part of the group that went up to Peekskill in 1949? Oh.
We worked at the camp there.
Oh, I see.
We were at Peekskill.
I
mean, at Beacon.
At Camp Beacon, right?
At Camp Beacon.
Yep, I see.
So, do you know that there were 2 before?
That's right. One
so
that
we were
never
the first
took place.
one.
Aha. In August, I think.
It was Loogie's car. I was the
Wow.
only woman. They were all guys, and luckily had no windows so they could put their heads out the window because there were so many of us in the car. Loogie drove there, and when we got there, because it was night already, we heard the scuffling, and the guys were very happy. And one of the guys went and took one. He said, "We got to get out of here."
Yeah.
So I did not know how to drive yet.
Sure.
And they put me behind the wheel. because they didn't want to start the motor because they would come after them.
Yeah, yeah.
So they pushed the car, and I
Wow.
hit the wheel, and we got out of there.
Wow.
Then, it was, I guess, in the fall or whatever, because we were in the city.
Yeah.
We went on the buses,
Uh-huh.
and you know what happened there.
Yeah. Wow.
And Mort, he was part of the guy.
He was
the
part.
guys
That's right.
were
The picture,
armed,
literally,
yeah.
like you said, arm in arm.
Yeah.
That
The
was
guys
wow.
protected. Yeah.
Wow. Mm.
When I think of it now, I think, were we crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
So what? But we had company.
yeah. All of these episodes, which are really very pivotal in U.S. history, but very few people know about them or learn
Right.
about them anymore.
Very few know about Peekskill.
Yep.
Very few.
That's right. But the first really large event after World War II where that kind of nastiness manifested itself. And then, of course, it did all throughout the Civil Rights movement, but that was the first.
Absolutely.
Wow. Wow. So you all were right there in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Wow. So looking back on everything, I know we barely scraped the surface on many aspects of your life, but one of the final questions I have for you is, what would you like to pass on, or what would you hope that you've passed on to your children and
My
grandchildren?
kids.
Yeah.
And my grandchildren. Well, I know that it's simplistic, but nobody's better than you, and you're no better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And be there to fight for the right. We still, every other Friday, there are not many of us, but we gather on 8th Avenue between 24th and 25th Street since George Floyd was killed.
Yeah.
And we do Black Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, everybody's lives matters.
Wow.
All kinds of signs.
Yeah, sure. Wow.
And whenever I can, I'm there.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm there. And the response is fabulous.
Yeah.
The buses, the trucks, the cars, the honking.
Yeah.
And people riding by on their skates or on they're shocked and they're taking pictures.
Yeah.
And it gives everybody a lift.
Yeah.
It's
definitely.
like, yeah, we're with you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There was only one guy who came up to us and was upset.
Yeah.
And I went up to him and I said, everybody's life matters.
Yeah.
And he shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you're still at it after all of these years.
It matters to me. It's we each have a right to be. We're not stepping on anybody else.
Yeah.
We just know that.
Yeah.
And be aware of it all the time so that you don't make a mistake and get into a spot where you're against somebody's rights.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Wow. Well, are there other parts of your life that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to share right now that occurred to you?
No, just that my husband and I were very there was one terrible time when my son-in-law died early, Carla's husband, and my son's wife decided to leave the marriage. So he had twin girls and she had a boy and a girl. So there were 4 kids that would be with one parent,
Yeah.
And the two of us looked at each other and we said, the family has to we got to take care of these kids.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm very much into children having the support and the attention that they need. I think kids have a right for that.
Yeah.
Nobody asked to be born.
Yeah.
We're the ones who gave birth to them.
Yeah.
And we got to take care of them.
Yeah.
We got to take care of them. And make sure they have a chance in life.
Yeah.
And that's when I feel so, this kid that died in the daycare because of fentanyl or whatever.
I know.
Oh my God.
Terrible.
Oh my God. Gotta take care of our kids.
Absolutely.
We've got to take care of our kids.
Absolutely.
I really feel that very strong. And we gotta help people help them take care of their kids.
Yeah, sure.
But sometimes, they need help.
Yeah, sure.
And it's okay to need help, and we gotta do it. We gotta step up and do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel that very strongly.
Yeah. And it's clear you've devoted your life to that with all of the different struggles you've been involved in with education and being an early childhood teacher yourself after you went to college and everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Absolutely.
Kids, they're the vulnerable ones, and you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that if kids get what they need, then they're not going to grow up hating and acting out in all kinds of ways that destroys other people and affects our society. I mean, what are we doing?
I know.
What are we doing?
I know. Absolutely.
I think that's that's paramount.
Yeah.
That's paramount. Because if we really focus and take care of it, we'll have a better society.
That's right.
Sounds simplistic,
but no.
And I don't have a plan for it.
I know, but all you have to do is look at how we spend money, and it's definitely not on children, or things that would be beneficial to children or families for that matter.
Exactly, support families.
Yeah. Instead, it's all just on tanks and robot policemen.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I think, I happen to like little kids, but I think that once you focus on that, you'll get the joy out of that.
Yeah.
Because you see it, it comes back. It does come back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Sonia, this has really been such a delight, recording some of your memories and being
Did I talk enough about the Coops?
You did, you did, and about many other parts of your life, which I'm very grateful to you for your time and for sharing everything that you shared. So thank you
I'm happy to
so
do that.
much.
Yeah.